You know how sometimes you hear about a group and you feel like there's uh, more to the story than what's on the surface?
Absolutely. You get that sense that you need to dig a bit deeper to really understand.
Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We're taking a deep dive into Keystone United.
Right. A group with roots right here in the U.S., formerly known as Keystone State Skinheads.
To get a clearer picture, we've pulled together info from, Wikipedia, but also organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
The Anti-Defamation League and various news reports that cover them over the years. Standard sources for this kind of topic.
Exactly. And our mission here, it's pretty straightforward. Understand where they came from, what they did, how they changed.
All based strictly on the information available in these sources we've gathered. No going beyond the data we have.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The very beginning. Where does it start?
Well, the sources point to 2001, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
And they weren't called Keystone United back then, right?
No, initially they were Keystone State Skinheads, KSS for short.
And their identity was pretty clear from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. White power skinhead, neo-Nazi. The sources are quite explicit about that.
Their initial focus then was Pennsylvania.
It seems so. Trying to unite white power skinheads across the state. That was the idea, apparently.
It sounds ambitious. Did they start small?
Very small, actually. Just 5 guys in Harrisburg, according to what we've read.
Wow, 5. But they grew from there.
Definitely. The info suggests pretty significant growth, with chapters popping up in Philly, Pittsburgh, Erie, Scranton, lots of places.
So spreading across Pennsylvania.
And even a bit beyond. There are mentions of associates in New Jersey, Maryland, New York.
Interesting. So a regional network started to form.
Seems that way. And some of that growth appears linked to existing networks.
Like how?
Well, one source mentions the Lancaster chapter actually grew out of a National Alliance youth group.
Ah, okay. So tapping into pre-existing structures.
Right. And there was also this event in York, PA, involving Matt Hale, leader of the World Church of the Creator.
I think I read about that. Drew counter-protests.
Exactly. Anti-racist action members showed up. These kinds of confrontations can, sometimes galvanize a group.
Yeah, it creates an us versus them dynamic, maybe.
Precisely. It can solidify identity even in the face of opposition.
Okay, so they're growing, having events. Then there's a name change.
Yes. Fast forward to 2008. Keystone State Skinheads becomes Keystone United.
Any idea why the change? Or how many members they had by then?
The why isn't explicitly stated in our sources, maybe rebranding. And member numbers.
Yeah.
Still unknown, the documents say. It's often hard to pin down specifics like that.
Right. But they had distinct symbols, logos.
Oh, yes. A pit bull, or sometimes a bulldog, often inside a chain or maybe a keystone symbol.
The Pennsylvania Keystone. Makes sense.
And the colors used. Red, white, black, circle. Echoing the Nazi flag. Very deliberate imagery.
No mistaking the message there.
Not at all. And it's worth noting the Southern Poverty Law Center called them, I think the quote was, one of largest and most active single-state racist skinhead crews in the country at the time.
Wow. Largest and most active in the single state. That's significant.
It definitely highlights their prominence within that specific scene back then.
So what were they actually doing? What kind of activities?
A major thing seems to have been organizing white power concerts.
In Pennsylvania.
Yes. The sources list quite a few bands that played these shows. Blue-Eyed Devils, Max Resist, Youngland.
Bands known within that specific genre.
Very much so. Grom, Cradle Song, Teardown, Those Opposed, Vinland Warriors, Grand Belial's Key, Fear Rains Down. The list goes on.
So these concerts were probably pretty important for them.
You'd imagine so. Community building, fundraising, spreading ideology through the music itself.
And networking, too. Did they work with other groups?
Yes, there's a specific mention of them helping coordinate Hammerfest in Pennsylvania back in late September 2003.
Hammerfest. That's associated with Hammerskin Nation, right?
That's right. So it shows connections to, larger established groups in the white supremacist movement.
Okay, concerts, networking. What else?
Well, interestingly, the sources also mention more family-oriented events, parties, picnics, that sort of thing.
Family events, really?
Yeah.
Alongside the concerts and ideology.
Yeah. And also more standard political stuff, handing out pamphlets, going to protests, putting up flyers.
That mix is interesting. The picnics almost sound normalizing.
It's a common tactic, you see. The social events build internal bonds, maybe make the group seem less intimidating to potential recruits.
While the pamphlets and protests push the actual ideology outwards.
Exactly. A two-pronged approach, in a way.
Okay, But unfortunately, it wasn't all just picnics and concerts, was it? There's mention of violence.
Yes, the sources detail quite a few incidents involving arrests. It starts pretty early on, June 2002.
What happened then?
3 members, Robert Gauss, Douglas Hoche, Joseph Hoche, arrested for assaulting a man at a diner in Feasterville.
Did it go to court?
They all pleaded guilty to simple assault, according to the reports.
And that wasn't isolated.
No, just a few months later, September 2002, different members, Todd Sager, Jason Hayden, Christopher Kjolf, assaulted a former member.
Why?
Apparently because he wouldn't return his colors, his group identifiers. They also pleaded guilty to assault.
So violence used internally as well? What else?
March 2003, Scranton. Keith Carney, Steve Smith, Steve Monteforte, arrested for ethnic intimidation.
What did they do?
Allegedly assaulted an African-American man.
Ethnic intimidation. That's a hate crime charge, essentially.
Yes. And then April 2003, Lancaster. 2 associates arrested for similar charges, ethnic intimidation, terroristic threats against black patrons at a bar.
So a definite pattern of assaults and intimidation emerges from these reports.
It seems so. And some incidents were extremely serious. March 2005, leading to charges in January 2006.
What was that one?
A violent bar fight in New Stanton. Edward Robert Locke was charged with attempted homicide.
Attempted homicide?
Yes. And Todd Sager, the same name from the 2002 assault, was charged with criminal solicitation in connection with it.
Wow, that's a major escalation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's another, even more severe case, though the timing is different.
Different how?
The crime itself happened way back in 1998 in Tampa, Florida. But the arrests came much later, in January 2007.
Okay, what happened in 98?
The murders of 2 homeless men, 4 individuals later linked to KSS were eventually convicted.
Murders. Who were they?
Kenneth Hoover, James Robertson, Corey Hulse, and Charles Moravskis.
And they were convicted?
Yes, they took various pleas. Hoover got 12.5 years for second-degree murder and racketeering. Moravskis got 20 years for 2 counts of second-degree murder. Hulse also got 20 years.
And Robertson?
James Robertson received life in prison for first-degree murder.
Life in prison. Okay, so it's important. As you said, this was 98 in Florida, before some of the other PA incidents.
Crucial distinction. But it highlights the potential for extreme violence connected to individuals within this ideology, even if separate from the group's main activities in PA later on.
Were there more incidents after the Florida case arrests?
Yes, a couple more noted in the sources. May 2007, Keith Carney again.
The one from the Scranton ethnic intimidation case?
Same name, yes. This time charged with weapons and assault charges. It was allegedly against a KSS associate.
Assaulting one of their own. Again.
Seems like it. Suggests possible internal discipline or conflict, maybe? Hard to say for sure from just the report.
And one more.
September 2008, Philadelphia. Andrew Boyle arrested for carrying a knife while he was already out on bail.
Bail for what?
For an alleged assault back in 2007, apparently involving Carney, Doug Caffarella, and Vincent DeFelice.
Okay, so a consistent thread of alleged violence running through the years covered by these sources.
That's the picture that emerges, yes.
So looking at the bigger picture, how did the group evolve over this period?
Well, the Anti-Defamation League tracked their evolution, noting the transformation from being mostly Harrisburg-focused.
To that wider network across PA and into nearby states we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They definitely expanded their geographical footprint.
Did they get much media attention? Aside from news reports of arrests?
They did get some wider exposure. They were featured in a National Geographic Channel documentary called American Skinheads.
Really? National Geographic? That would have brought them to a much broader audience.
Presumably, yes.
Okay.
Though likely not the kind of attention they necessarily wanted, depending on how they were portrayed.
And general news coverage continued.
Yes. Their presence and activities were documented in various news articles during that period.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up, pulling all this together from the sources.
We see Keystone United, starting as Keystone State Skinheads in 2001, clearly identifying as a white power neo-Nazi group.
They grow from just a handful of guys in Harrisburg
Into this network across Pennsylvania and beyond, organizing concerts, social events, political actions.
but also, unfortunately, linked to numerous documented incidents of violence, assault, intimidation, and even connections to murder convictions.
Right. And they gained attention, both from watchdog groups like the SPLC and ADL, and from media, including that documentary. The name change in 2008 is a notable point in their timeline.
But the core ideology, based on the logos and activities described, seems to have remained pretty consistent through that change.
That's what the available information strongly suggests, yes. The packaging changed, maybe, but the content seems stable.
It's certainly been a detailed look into this specific group's trajectory based on the sources we had.
It paints a picture, definitely, from origins through activities and into significant legal troubles for members.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What makes a group like this form and grow in a specific place and time?
Yeah, what are the local factors, the broader societal currents? And what does this specific case tell us about how these kinds of extremist movements operate?
How they evolve, how they sustain themselves, the impact they have.
Definitely things to reflect on. It's a
Mhm.
complex picture, and this deep dive just gives us one case study based on the available info.
Food for thought for our listeners, for sure. Examining the dynamics based on what we've laid out today.